of April 14th Affordable Housing Trust meeting to order. We are hybrid tonight, so we could get a quorum. So I'm going to roll call everybody in, starting with Matt Often,
I am here.
Dan Kusher,
Here.
Ed Prisby,
Here.
Brittany Murphy.
Mark.
It's Brittany. I'm way off.
Yeah.
Two first names.
Yeah. I'm just going to go with Eric,
Yeah, Eric Swenson here.
and I'm here too. All right. So we had a couple technical difficulties. Hopefully everybody's in. We're going to give Lakeisha just another minute to see if she's going to log in before we start everything. We have a few people in the audience. Hopefully everybody was able to get the agenda. They were none printed off for here. I have a copy. I assume you all have a digital copy anyways. I can pass this around if need be. So you're gonna have to bear with me for about 3 or 4 minutes. We were late to get the panel set up, so Lakeisha tries to log back in. I do not have her. I don't have her number. So
Yeah, I don't either. I sent the Zoom link to the trust alias, so
okay.
she'll get the email if she sees it then.
If she logged in at 7:30, so she wouldn't have been able to get in.
Yeah. It has been like 10 minutes since I sent the email, so
Give or take.
if you want to. Yeah, it's been 12 minutes, so.
Okay, so I'll just give a brief update on the grant proposal regarding the GSX Upton Street project. So the attorneys now have the document going back and forth. I gave the list of things that needed to be considered. The primary piece was the after the grant gets written, we needed a schedule of distribution. It's of course covered over a couple years. A couple other key things that I wanted to make sure we had an interest in was who's going to be monitoring the site afterwards. They've selected Bell Partners, which is also doing the Pine Street project. I have an interview with them next week just to get up to speed on how they handle these things and some past experiences they've had in the Commonwealth dealing with the monitoring service, dealing with DHCD, et cetera, et cetera. As I've mentioned in the past, this is not a traditional 40B, so we need to make sure we're filling in all the normal channels that would get like auto-checked as it goes through the 40B process. Those type of things weren't included in our bylaw, even though there was a statute that, made them be 10% affordable to apply. There was no really details on how they monitor it and how everything were to go after completion and in the permitting process. So we're fleshing out all that information. We're paralleling most of the stuff that we do already. It's just going to fall on the trust to make sure that moving forward we get everything that we need out of it. So everything's there. We've spent some time, Eric's been a big help handling some of the asks for the different departments that have permit fees assigned to this particular project. Hopefully we get on their next meetings over the next couple months, whether it be the select board, water district, or sewer commission. So we're going to formally ask, and then we'll go to and hopefully get invited to each of their commissions and be able to present the project and see if we can mitigate some of the permits. In the grant application, what will probably happen is it will probably be a forgivable loan. It's something that has been used by a lot of trusts in the Commonwealth on deals very similar to this. We were able to actually find a deal in Lincoln for a relatively just about the same amount of money that we're actually offering in our program, and that went through last year. So there are a lot of parallels there, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel on a lot of the language, seeing that's already been done. very, very similar. There's also two other communities that have done a very similar program as well. Not quite this style, but very similar in how they approach the actual developers and handle it moving forward. So I'll have some updates. We'll post a meeting for the subcommittee for the actual grant language as soon as I get a final draft, and then we'll review it real quick and get a sign off if it's satisfactory, and then we'll give it back to Kathleen, who, if nobody knows, is the trust's attorney. And to put the finishing touches on it and put it before the trust for final review and then commitment. So hopefully we can get this all done over the next 2 or 3 months. We should at very least have an understanding of what's going to be recouped as far as the grant is concerned. There'll be at different stages. GSX has agreed to, when they go through their refinancing measures, if there is a profitability point, we will get some of the grant money back, and what will probably be is we just will not expend it. And then we need to make sure we have provisions in the proposal or the mortgage language that allows that money to come back after a certain amount of time. It'll probably be somewhere in the 2 to 3 year mark. So that's pretty much all I have. That if anybody has any questions for me, you can either email them to me, or you have something that you want to say tonight that you can certainly take the opportunity. Anybody have anything, or keep going until we get a draft? All right, perfect. Moving on to 25 Worcester Street. We do have some people in the audience tonight for trust members who are at home. I sent out the questionnaire, which also had a couple of RFPs for different communities. This was from our meeting with Mass Housing, who awarded us our grant to help us run not only just the administration of our proposals and our kind of like our staff support, so to speak, for a project on 25 Worcester Street, but also to extend to us their network to show us things that have been done and in a similar scenario. So Laura was kind enough to send us a couple copies. The one that we should pay particular attention to is the RFP for Gloucester, which hopefully everybody's had a chance to review. This was something that we talked about briefly, and she found us some actual real world examples, and they're relatively recent real world examples as well. So if this is something that we want to pursue, I wanted to make sure everybody went through the questionnaire. If you don't have it ready for me tonight, I need it by next Monday, and then Ed and I will submit it back to Laura, and then she can go to the next phase of whatever process the MHP does with regards to their grant awardees. Does anybody have any questions or wants to start a dialogue about either the RPs or anything, any feedback you want to give me to extend to Laura?
Just from my understanding, we would be requesting that MHP write the RFP, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
My impression, and Ed, stop me if I'm wrong, is they're kind of like a soup to nuts
Yeah.
for this type of thing. So
Yeah.
if we're specific on what we kind of want, that's what the questionnaire is there for. That will hone in to take a very broad outlook on it and kind of narrow it down a little bit. And then they'll go through the language, they'll go through the actual marketing, so to speak, from start to finish. What we just have to do is decide that this is a direction that we want to take and pursue. And then we can put everything else, especially a schedule of events, before everybody, so everybody understands what we're doing, when it needs to get done by, and what we're actually trying to accomplish. So,
Bruce,
yes, Matt.
So what I read in the email from MHP was that they were looking for us to come to consensus on the questions in the questionnaire. So is what you're proposing that we send you our sort of fill it out, send it to you, and then you'll compile them and figure out what that consensus is? Or do you want to just talk through and come to consensus in our meeting? and
No,
send it
I'd
back
rather
as a-
everybody. We'll have another meeting off of our normally scheduled time
Okay.
to compile everything. Why doesn't everybody just cycle it to me, and then I'll assign somebody to kind of.
Yeah, put all the
everything
responses
together.
together. We can send that out to everybody to review so we see all the different responses, and then
Okay.
we'll have kind of start on the 50-yard line for the discussion instead of from 0.
What I wanted everybody to kind of coalesce around tonight is this an area that we want to expend time on? The idea behind it. We talked about it at our last meeting. Everybody's got the material now. Is this type of community habitat something that we want to move forward with? And if everybody's kind of like under the impression that yes, this is something we can do, let's start to flesh out the details, and we'll put in the effort, and we'll get everything done, and then we'll get something in front of everybody. So yeah, this is what we want to send over to MHP. So before I take any more questions from the trust, just seeing that we actually have people in the audience tonight who may not be up to speed on what we've been doing over the last couple months, is MHP is Mass Housing. They're a state institution that awards trusts. They do a whole myriad of other things, but for us, they'll help us figuring out how to realize the goals that we have for 25 Worcester Street. So what we had mentioned in the past meeting is basically a small community of basically staffed assisted living type of thing. It's not truly assisted living, but if somebody has the appropriate word for what this is actually called from that meeting, all right. Well, we'll just go with.
Didn't she call it frail elderly?
Basically, yes. It's 65 plus, managed care. Yeah, that's another way to put it. Basically, staff on site, independent living. So individual units, and then it's mostly going to be 65 plus, which of course meets the benchmark for what the warrant decided we can do as far as the restriction is concerned. So the number of units and things like that will, when we get one step deeper, we'll look at what size of a complex would be most conducive to getting a successful RFP. And then MHP will handle all the diligence that comes with the RFP proposal. They'll put it together. We'll, of course, vote on it here. They'll go out and essentially bid it for us and manage the back end of it as well. So the idea behind it is what I'm guessing is probably going to be somewhere between 35 and 40 units in a managed care type of facility. Gloucester is, if you look at that RFP, you can kind of use that as a template for what we could do there. So, but of course, when everybody gets a better feel for it and we compile some of the questionnaire, we can have another meeting so you can give me some better direction moving forward, and I can go back to Laura and kind of fine tune it. Does anybody have any questions for me? I'll do public comment in a moment.
So I like this approach. I think it's I liked the frail elder proposal. It was a similar size lot that they went to RFP on, and I'd be in favor of pursuing something like that, something similar to that. I think there's definitely a need for it. And we almost have like a template for it. Their RFP I thought was pretty good. I mean, it's not what we would want necessarily completely, but that type of facility, I would definitely be in favor of pursuing. I'm wondering if, because it's for elderly and um, this isn't like a primary motivation of mine for this type of thing, but would it count against SHI even though we don't have that need specifically called out in our housing production plan?
It would be. So we would have, specifically here, what's great about this is it's rental. And then the affordability component that they were able to finagle was no greater than 60% of the area median income, with 25% of the units affordable. So you would get the total number of units that were there once you hit that 25% threshold.
Okay.
Even
That's
with
cool.
the age restriction, because I know we.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that because it's like I forget the verbiage, but like a recognized need in the community for that? Is that what qualifies it for SHI?
You know, what she recognized, what she pointed out to us was, in general, you know, generally speaking, all things being equal, what HUD wants to do is they want to see all these projects, you know, go to the general population and service families as well as elders. But when you are efforting a lot of other units that have that generalized population, then they're not going to have they're not going to care whether or not there is an age restriction on this particular deed, so long as the community as a whole is marching toward the 10% threshold and a bunch of other projects are addressing other populations.
It's a specialized
Yep.
need too, so it isolates something that there's a cognitive effort by the state to remedy. So, Brittany, did you have something?
And I think some of their
Oh no, I'm asking you first.
responses to had like 30% AMI thresholds, right, for some of the units too. So if we can dip down even to that low of an AMI threshold, you know, the lower we can go, the more and more in favor of any type of affordable housing development plan I'm in favor of. I was really surprised actually to see that was even possible, and pleased, frankly.
So was I. I was really afraid that we were going to have to fund a larger portion of this, and we would have been able to after GSX. And basically, what Laura said was, "Look, we have the land. You give the land to the developer. You send out an RFP, and we were able to do this in Gloucester, and they were able to do that at a decent percentage of AMI." It's possible that the situation is going to be different in Grafton, different location, different developers.
Yep.
And, you know, to get down to 30%, it may cost us a little bit to sort of, again, grease the skids a little, but we'll see. You know, I was really pleasantly surprised with what she was telling us.
There's a fairly big demand for this now too, and it's not an opportunity that that comes across a developer's desk, so to speak, or an institution that provides these services. So it's not easy to get accomplished. So there's a fair amount of margin in there that they can play with. Brittany?
Yeah, that's all good points there too. I noticed the lower percentage of market rate, but I did like the Lawrence design guidelines, of course, being my background. So if we could add a little bit more into the design and aesthetics, I'd be happy.
I think that's something that we'll have to vet through it as we go. So as we approach, you know, putting the fine tuning on the RFP, that's a point where, you know, we should engage the neighborhood as long as we there's an understanding that's built that this is something that we want to do. And it's going to have another stage at a certain point where this is going to come under some type of review, which may take everything that we wanted to do and change it on us, within reason, but it could very well happen. Because as much as I would like to have her participate and put together a project that meets the needs of everybody, I can't necessarily say that that's going to be the same needs that the ZBA is going to require from us as well. I'm going to take a couple brief moments, seeing that we actually had some people show up to our meeting.
I did just have something additional. So, just on the design, I do want to note on the third point in the questionnaire that if we do get too prescriptive on the design, it triggers public construction laws, which I'm thinking we're gonna want to avoid in terms of bidding and stuff. So, I just want to put that out there. And then my other question, I might have missed this, but is there a way that we can make the RFP more generalized, or was her recommendation, hey, you got to kind of pick a lane to go for and then, submit the RFP that way? I guess I just, it's like we don't really know what the market is until we put the RFP out. But if we're, kind of in a niche, we might get no responses, and then we have to do a second RFP and a third. So I might have missed this in the call because I think I was late to it, but did she talk about that? Like, do we really have to get this specific on the RFP?
It's, again, stop me if I'm wrong, but I didn't think we got that far into the specifics of it.
Yeah, no, we didn't. That's a really good question. We can bring that question to her, Eric.
Okay.
It's important that you all send the questionnaire to me,
Yeah.
So we can kind of go through it okay, so I appreciate people showing up to the meeting. I'll just start with Ron, and I'll move my way back through the room. But you're gonna have to come up to the mic, introduce yourself, let me know, where you live, and then
Don't you know by now?
Yeah, I do, but you're gonna have to go through the motions
Sure.
for me.
Ron Warwick, 32 Worcester Street. I was a little confused. I kept hearing percentages, and I didn't know what they were percentages of. I guess my question, though, is whether you get 35 or 40 units there, are they all to be frail elderly?
That's the impression that I get from it. Yes.
So it isn't going to be similar to a 40B where 25% are going to be affordable housing, and the other percent would be market value.
So
That's not what you're expecting.
You're talking two different things. One
Right.
is the particular project that we'd be looking for would be age restrictive, and the entire institution would be focused on the same
Population.
Okay. No, Ed mentioned 30%, so I wasn't sure if the 30% was taking place, was overriding the 25% in a 40B,
It's
and you're not
not.
talking about that at all.
No,
Okay.
so the AMI is basically just it's a threshold point at which applicants would be able to be allowed the units at a pre-described
Right.
cost.
Last
And
question.
the 25% is basically the ratio of units that fall under that provision. So 25% of the units are 30% of AMI, then
Right.
the entire complex would be considered affordable.
Okay.
And AMI is average median income. Average median? No. What is it? Area median income.
Area meeting, right?
Yeah, so there's a couple different percentages. The AMI, the 30%, is whatever Grafton's medium income is. The affordable units would have to be affordable based on somebody making only 30% of median income and over 65, which is common. You're on, fixed income at that point. And then the 25% you always hear about is of the total units that are built, whatever that is, if 25% of those do satisfy that AMI affordability threshold, then the entire complex counts towards our affordability goals as a town.
Right. Okay.
Do you have anything else?
No, that was it.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Bruce, I just want to point out we do have one Zoom attendee with the hand raised.
Yep.
Okay.
Whenever you want to do that.
Let me go through the room first, and then I'll go through people that are hybrid. Sir, did you want to come on up, please?
Hi, Scott Jordan, 29 Sartell Road. It's 30 to 40 units I've heard. How many structures are we talking about? How tall?
That's
3-story
decided.
structures?
And so we'll go from the concepts that we have now. We'll probably use the same engineering firm that we've used just because we've done the survey work already. But when we go through the rest of the questionnaire and we figure out how large of a facility, then we'll go to the engineer, and as part of that process, we'll say how does this fit on here, to meet all of the kind of benchmarks that we have.
Okay.
Do we want to restrict building height? Do we want more lower buildings, or we do want one larger building. You know, those are the type of things we'll flesh out as we move a couple more steps down the road.
Okay. So, in the folks I've spoken to in the neighborhood, you know, we're not opposed to a project on the lot. It's the scale, you know, and the appropriateness of it. It's an area of beautiful antique single-family homes for the most part, and we just don't want a commercial-looking 3-story structure, parking lots and dumpsters and stuff plopped down in there. That's my concern.
I don't think so. I think we've been pretty cognizant of, you know, the fact that we wanted to blend as best as we can.
That's
You know,
just,
there will be a certain point where our mission for what we're trying to accomplish as a trust will intersect with, you know, how much we want to dictate the aesthetics of a particular, because they drive costs. So, you know, we have a lot of things to consider, but we'll certainly be taking input as we go through, to get a project that, you know, we can, everybody can kind of coalesce around within reason.
good. Thank
So-
you.
And I just want to reiterate that, you know, we don't have the decision-making authority here on the trust to dictate how it goes through the channels in the town. It will still go through all the normal channels. So, one more question. Come on up for me, please.
My name is Keith Coveney, and I'm at 17 Worcester Street. Just to follow up on this gentleman's question is, are there any restrictions or requirements of the amount of space dedicated to structure versus green space? Or recreation gardens, or, you know, things like that?
So, there, you know, the zoning that there is now is R20. So you're kind of, you know, what you can do by right is kind of what's there now. We'll be going through the variance process. So, you know, pretty much everything is on the table within reason. But if you follow the ZBA and what their track record is, you know, they're pretty cognizant of building height, buffering, screening, and things like that. So, you know, aesthetics of the building is also something that they pay a lot of attention to.
Sure.
So it would behoove this particular trust to make sure we put a project together that's going to work with them a little bit. So I think as we get a little bit closer to that point, and we get, you know, an idea that we can coalesce around on the trust perspective with some community input, we'll probably want to approach the ZBA and say, hey, this is what we're going to propose. This is something that the town said it wanted to do via town meeting vote. We're trying to honor that commitment and having the land come over to us. And this is our project. Please don't, you know, put us in a 9-month-long process with you, you know, reinventing the wheel. You know, this is a community effort. So hopefully everybody will kind of pick up on that message, and we'll make sure we're very open about how we move forward with it so everybody can get involved and nobody's surprised. So
And I mean, I would even kind of correct something you said, Bruce. We don't know if this will be a variance process because the trust does not build anything. Just so the public understands, the trust has in its possession the land of 25 Worcester Street. The process is such that we are discussing putting together a request for proposal from developers. So to some, in fact, to a large extent, we are completely dependent on the market. So if the market is saying nobody wants to build anything more than 8 units here, there's nothing that's going to be built that's more than 8 units. We are dependent on responses to the RFP. So, you know, it's easier to not go through the variance process. So we may get proposals that are 8 units or less. We don't know. And basically what we can vote on once we receive responses is who to award the RFP to. And then from that point, it's kind of out of our hands. We would likely convey the land at no cost. And then depending on the characteristics of the development, it's either going to go through the planning board or the ZBA and go through all the, you know, due diligence checks and such that they do.
that's why I mentioned there's going to be some intersection between what our mission is and, you know, what the community actually wants or the neighborhood wants in that particular law. So it's a fine line. We're going to be as fair as we can, but that's kind of what our role is.
Bruce, can I just say one thing to add to this a little bit? It's not worth it for any developer to come in and completely dig their heels in on design and put in something that's just not going to be congruous with the remainder of the neighborhood. What we're seeing in modern affordable housing architecture really are nice buildings that fit with their surroundings by and large. I think the only thing here that we're trying to be cognizant of, again, as Eric pointed out, we're trying to fit a certain number of units in there. And if you're going to get a developer to bite on this, there's going to be a unit count. We're trying to impact the housing market in Grafton by giving as many people as we can an opportunity to live here affordably. So the buildings are probably going to sound larger when we talk about them like this than they will be when you see them. Because again, I drive down that street every day and you've got you'd be surprised, there are a lot of 3-story buildings in that vicinity, in that surrounding. So, it would behoove a developer to make them as congruous with the neighborhood as possible so that we don't spend a whole ton of time, or they don't spend a whole ton of time and their money fighting with ZBA over, what it looks like.
Yeah. It's not going to look
those
like
meetings cost money to them too.
It won't look like government center.
Right.
Another thing too, just to put in perspective, if you look at the current building situation and the market as it stands now, density drives projects. So if you give up a little bit of density, you probably have the margins in there to do a little bit of aesthetics, and buffering and screening and things like that. So there is a give and take in this for something that on the outset looks like you don't want it because it's 50 units. But perhaps 50 units is a break point where you're going to be able to get what you want as far as screening, buffering, some open space, depending on the how the actual and the architecture is laid out, things of that nature. Ma'am.
Pam Hollander, 4 Hillside Avenue. I just had a question. Do you still have to go through the 40B process, and is that the same thing as a variance process, or is this totally different?
It kind of is, and it isn't. So this would be kind of a special nature. So I guess you could say it's 40B. The town's going to be in safe harbor by the time we get this project proposed.
And what will that mean for the project?
It gives the town, the ZBA, more flexibility to request or demands for it. When you're not in safe harbor, there are limitations on the ZBA for what they can demand of a developer. Once we are in safe harbor, which we are, the ZBA has more authority to make demands.
So, would they possibly hold you to the zoning that's there now for 8 units, or would it?
They very well could be.
They could.
Yeah.
Would you have to take that? Would you have to go to town meeting again to get the 40B or the variance?
No.
No, you don't have to do that.
And it wouldn't even be us at that point. It would be the developer, because at that point, we would have already conveyed the land to whoever the RFP winner is.
And then they would have to go to the ZBA
Correct.
and get the 40B.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
There'll be some nuance in there where the trust will be playing an intimate role in the process. We're not going to just give the land over and say, here, go do what you think you can do, and hopefully you can get it. It's not going to be that type of relationship, at least not while I'm on the trust anyways. Okay. So I imagine everybody else has the same views. Yeah. So.
And I don't know if it makes sense, but we do have another Hollander on here on the.
And Bruce, again, sorry,
Yeah,
just to add to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
If I can, 1 second, the other calculus that we have is if we get the sense that the ZBA is going to hold it to 8 units and they're digging their heels in, we don't have to do this project right now. We just wait until the safe harbor sunsets, because safe harbor is only good for a little while. Then you're right back into 40B, because we haven't met that 40B 10% threshold in Grafton yet.
When would it sunset?
Want me to?
So just
Justin's
yeah.
on.
Let me handle this question here, and then I'll come back to a couple different
Yeah,
points.
I think it's Justin Hollander, so I'm just gonna put you on in 1 second. All right, you should be able to talk, Justin. You just have to unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I appreciate being recognized. And really happy to see you guys moving ahead with this partnership with MHP. They bring a lot of expertise, and I can see that this is going to help move move this project, which I'm personally very supportive of. The reason I've decided to join you guys today and wanted to make a comment is because, you know, the order of business is filling out this questionnaire, and I know that, even though I haven't seen the questionnaire, but I know one of the questions is how many units, and we've been having this conversation. I appreciate you guys answering all these questions about how many units. Well, given the fact that we are in safe harbor, as it appears, or we're about to be certified as such, you know, it seems to me that it's quite reckless to enter into that questionnaire any number higher than 8, because that is simply going to create all kinds of problems related to the developer. I mean, I looked at that Gloucester RFP. I saw what it said, and it says we expect that this project will be subject to the 40B and will, and that we will have, there'll be an opportunity for the developer to overcome the zoning to go beyond what's allowable. So I would ask you guys to enter 8 units into that the questionnaire, and that way we can make sure that 8 units of affordable housing get built on that site.
Justin, it will certainly be part of our calculus. I'm not going to speak to it right now until everybody's had a chance to actually fill out the questionnaire. I know we've mentioned this in the past, but the trust role here is to advocate for the most sensible and most productive way to develop affordable housing on the project. So we need to make sure that we give everybody on the trust the opportunity to say, oh, well, no, I think this. It may be that we say, well, we are in safe harbor, and as we go through and kind of collect our collective understanding on this and say, well, I don't think this is going to pass through ZBA. I don't think this is, you know, we're just going to leave somebody a lamb out to the slaughter, so to speak. But I don't want to restrict everybody's movements on it now. I mean, there's other ways to handle a project with greater density at the location than just going through the ZBA. So that's also something that we can talk about as we get a little bit further down the road. Now, when I say a little bit further down the road, we're going to be moving on this with some sense of alacrity. So, you know, the questionnaires are back to me on Monday. We'll have another meeting on the week following, because next week is April vacation. So we'll come back the next Thursday after that and have another meeting this month and firm up the direction. So hopefully we get some attendance as well as we kind of put together a little bit more detail and some of our ideas for moving forward with what hopefully we can find some consensus on. And then after that, we'll have to vote on it, and then we'll send it over to Laura and have another meeting with her. And then they'll set up the parameters in the actual RFP, which then will, of course, come back to us. So I know it's frustrating how slow these wheels happen to move, but this is just kind of how it is in an open meeting process. So figure hopefully by mid-April we'll have something together that we can send out, or at least be able to vote on. So of course we'll post everything so people can come back and contribute as best we can. So I appreciate everybody coming out for this. Does anybody else have anything on this?
Bruce, got a quick comment.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure it's clear that when we get into safe harbor, it's time limited. So either you get 1 year or 2 years, depending on the number of units you build. I think I've heard we're expecting to get the 2 years, build enough units to get 2 years out of it. But then if you don't build more units, it ends and you're out of safe harbor. So while you're in safe harbor, you want to make sure you're still moving things along. So to say that because we're in safe harbor, we're not going to pursue something larger than 8 units, that's not really a given there, because it's you want to plan ahead for when that runs out.
I would tend to agree. Just in case people aren't familiar with the safe harbor process and how 40B kind of works, there's been a lot of mystery at some of the past meetings as everybody's kind of thought about what that meant, and then try to articulate that. I spent a considerable amount of time with DHCD going through and ironing it out, and then again with Chris McGoldrick as well. So the amount of units that we have proposed and right now in the process, so to speak, is enough to give us safe harbor for 2 years. Now, the restriction on that particular project is it has to have its building permit issued within a year. It looks like the GSX project over at Pine Street is well within, or going to be well within getting its building permit inside a year. So they got their demo permit. They've done demo. I don't know if anybody's been over there. This is over by the train station. The project is moving along. GSX happens to be a partner of the trusts on another particular project. So we have a fair amount of insight on how they're funding and how they're moving forward. And it looks like they got most of their initial capital done and most of their latter capital done. So the project is going to move forward. So you can probably anticipate that building permit is going to be issued in a timely manner. That will trigger the fact that we will be in safe harbor for 2 years. And that 2 years is basically if you meet a certain percentage towards your 10% goal in a community, you either get 1 or 2 years. So if you go over 1% of the amount of units you need to make that 10%, you get a year off, so to speak. And then if you make 2% in one particular year, you get 2 years. It's kind of layman's terms for it. There seems to be a lot more, of an art form with DHCD on how these things get rolled out. But that's how it was explained to me, and that's the situation that Grafton is in currently. So what that means is that if you were to present to the ZBA a particular project while in safe harbor, they can certainly say no. And that's their right, of course, to do so. So I don't know if you followed the meeting. We, of course, all did when they came before the selectmen and kind of hashed out everything. A little bit more diligence on our part. So kind of find out the truth of the matter anyways. So it will definitely have to be part of our calculus. So Matt, you got something, and then we'll move on to the next. So.
I was just gonna mention, I guess, in member updates, I have asked to put that on our upcoming agenda. The fact that we're now in safe harbor and kind of how we deal with that, so we can explore this topic a little bit more as I do that update, if that makes sense.
Sure. All right. So if anybody doesn't have anything further, I'm not sure if the folks in the audience.
Is the parking less for elderly too, or is it the same?
The zoning restrictions are going to be the same. The bylaw is going to be the same.
Ask for it to be less. It's going to be like.
Of course, yeah. It's all on the table with the variance. So whether it's 1.7 per unit, 1.5, they would take into consideration the style of housing that's going to be there and the amount of cars they anticipate.
You can make that argument.
Of course, yeah. It's been made before them before, too.
Yeah.
So, does anybody else in the audience have anything else on the latter parts of our agenda that they want to stay for? If not, then I'll give you a moment to clear the room, just so it's not a lot of feedback for us.
Thank you.
I appreciate everybody coming, and
Thank you.
just figure a couple weeks we'll meet again.
Wait, somebody left their. Okay, it's fine.
How many people do we have in panelists? Okay, can everybody, all the panelists see who we have in the audience tonight?
What do you mean?
Yeah.
I just want everybody to be aware of who's in the room. You can never do it when it's on, hybrid very easily.
Yeah, if you're a panelist, you can see the attendees as well.
Okay.
Do you mean in the room physically, like with you?
No.
Both.
The room is
Okay.
actually clear now. Everybody here was here for our other items. Now we're moving on to C, which, judging from the past couple months, could be a little bit more of a volatile subject. So I want to make sure everybody knows who's in the room as we're talking.
I'm not volatile.
I'm not accusatory at this point now. In 5 minutes I may be, but I'm not sure. So I put this on here. It's something that we kind of started the conversation on a couple months ago with the select board. It's evolved into something completely else. I want to make sure that, you know, the trust has a mission, and we need to make sure that, you know, we can fulfill that. In so doing, we need to look to take care of or take advantage of every opportunity that's out there, whether it be boards and committees that we can have an influence over to move our goals forward. So this particular piece, you know, we talked to the select board a few months ago now and you know, asked for representation on the CPC. It doesn't look like it has much, many legs right now. Without getting into too much of those particulars, I want to make sure the trusts has a position to or has an understanding of what we want to move forward with. Do we want to abandon it? Do we want to look at, you know, like what Ray said on that particular night about, you know, just applying for a membership to the at-large positions and going from that angle, or do we want to support a warrant article of our own?
I don't think that's feasible
So,
to get one of those at-large positions.
1 second, Brittany.
Oh, sorry.
No, say that again. I'm sorry.
I don't think that would be feasible to get an at-large position.
I mean, it's an appointment process.
It seems like from that 4-hour meeting that I watched.
Did you?
Does not. Yeah, you could have gave me the time marks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you had good segue. Your first meeting was with us, which was
I
what,
know.
3.5 hours.
Yeah.
You know what? I want to canvass everybody here, get your initial thoughts, and then have a productive conversation on it. I'll go last, so I tend to get too wordy. So let's just go around the room. Let's start with Dan.
I kind of feel like it wouldn't pass at town meeting if even if we decided we wanted to. If the select board isn't supporting it and the CPC members come out in full force against it, like they did with the CIPC bylaw warrant article, I think it's not going to happen at town meeting. Whether we want to do it or not.
Fair enough. Ed.
Well, I'm sitting in my office here as a lawyer because I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know what's going to pass at a town meeting, and most of the time I don't particularly care. I think you take people's agency away from them when you predict what they're going to do and not even give them the chance to turn us down. Nothing's changed for me. I feel like this is kind of a no-brainer. The Community Preservation Act has 3 main totems. It is historic preservation, open space, and affordable housing. And it just so happens the way the law is written and the way our bylaw is written, we don't have trust membership on there because this predated the existence of affordable housing trusts in Massachusetts to begin with. We've got, a housing authority guy on there, which is sort of like adjacent to what we do, but it really doesn't have anything to do with what we do. Just has the name housing in the title. So everybody thinks it's the same thing, but they don't really know. And look, judging from the 4-hour meeting, a portion of which I attended, we spent 25 minutes under cross-examination from one of the members who clearly didn't understand what it is that we do. So both from a funding perspective and from a communication and understanding perspective, I think both the CPC and the Affordable Housing Trust need to be in the same room on a more regular basis. And we need the sort of authority that a vote gives. I've been an associate member on a board, showing up to meetings and just sitting there and giving your 2 cents when you don't really have any genuine power or input in the decision being made is a farce. Nobody really cares. And to be perfectly honest with you, the amount of pushback that we're getting on this very simple idea is telling about how much that this needs to happen. So sure, let's sponsor the warrant article. Obviously I'm disappointed in the select board. They called us in. They said, what can we help you with? We told them. And then as soon as I got pushback, they said, forget it. Obviously that's not happening this year. Well, obviously, really? So, now we're kind of in a worse spot than we were rhetorically on this, because the first thing that opposing members on CPC are going to bring up as well, the select board brought this up and now they're not even supporting it. So, thanks. But all the same, a good idea remains a good idea no matter whose idea it is. And that's just good government right there. So I'm all in favor of it. Let's do it. We'll make the argument on town meeting floor. If it fails, it fails. We'll try again the next year.
Matt.
If the Housing Trust wants to move forward with it, I'll advocate for it at town meeting. Obviously, as a select board member, I didn't want to have the quality of meeting that we've had a lot of recently at town meeting. So I wasn't in support of the select board putting that forth. I don't think it's a terrible idea, and I do think if anybody from the trust wants to apply for any of the open seats coming up, please do. That's another way that we can consider supporting the trust. I don't know what to say more than that. So I'm going to pass the baton to whoever's next.
Brittany.
Well, I said already that I don't think it's feasible we'll get a member at large spot. I mean, there is some experience they have there, but maybe they need some different experience. Yeah, we're not going to get the support from them. I don't think it was brought up to them well, maybe. Could have been done a little differently. Just seems very hostile. So if we go to them for a money request, they already give us money every year, right? Without having to ask. So can we go for them for more money?
Of course you can. Yep.
And we haven't yet.
Not to date.
And if we did for
Well, the only time that we did that was with the
rental
the rental
assistance.
assistance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course they passed that because, I mean, you don't really have a... It's morally good.
It's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I'm just trying to... Yeah, it seems like a losing battle. I'm for it. I'll support it. I'll be at town meeting and support it. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say. I don't know many of those people, so can't really say.
It's a nice perspective to have somebody who's not part of this 200 some odd people that have been, made this their lives for the last
Seems
20
very
years.
cliquey. I just...
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, the product lends itself to that too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my
Very
perspective
closed.
is, I get where they're coming from. You have 20 years experience on this board, but how is somebody else supposed to get that experience if you never let new people on the board, right? So.
Fair enough. Eric?
Yeah, I support putting this on the warrant. Most of what Ed said is where my head's at. It's just the way that the chronology worked. There was no housing trust at the time that the CPC was created. So they couldn't put a trust member on there. That's not the fault of any of the current select board members. It's not the fault of any of the CPC members. It's just, that's how it was. And, we have the opportunity to change that. For some degree, I understand, CPC, they have people that have been on there a long time. It's unfortunate that, you would ostensibly need to replace somebody if the trust was given an official spot on the CPC. But, I think that it just doesn't make any sense that two of the three areas that can be funded by CPC have representation and one does not. Conservation and historical are both on there. So, and recreation. So yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer. And I'm just like Ed said, I can't predict the future, and I don't know if it was Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, or Michael Scott who said you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So let's put it on the warrant and see what happens.
So bear with me. Eric will tap me if I go over
Yeah.
my time.
You got 2 minutes.
Can I ask a question? The Housing Authority membership on the CPC, have they ever asked for any funds?
They can't.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna get to that
Okay,
piece.
yeah, that's.
I'll
I'm
do it in the
curious
front
on
part,
that.
so as everybody kind of tones me out, I'll try to be, so there's a member, the GHA has membership, that's the Grafton Housing Authority. They, well, you know, they may run in parallel to what we do. There is no funding mechanism currently between, CPA funds and them. So the idea behind it is that that's the representation. And in a lot of communities, CPA does funds, you know, GHA style projects, you know, Acton for one. So they you know, they contributed to the building of a particular project. They can contribute to building of it later. In this community, that hasn't happened and has never happened. So the role that's on there to support housing trust was never changed from a GHA representative to a trust membership, and nobody's ever asked until we kind of have stepped up and asked. Now I have worked, and a few of us have gone. Me personally have spent a lot of hours with the Housing Authority, the Commission, and their staff to try to find avenues in which we can collaborate on efforts. One of them, of course, was with 25 Worcester Street, and a few years before that with the Hudson Street project. Unfortunately, HUD just doesn't want to have anything to do with it, and we can't find any particular way for us to be able to develop a parcel and then hand it over to them to take over.
Manage it, yeah.
They're just not interested in it. So it's a fall down point, and in the past, the trust really hasn't requested money. We've gotten kind of what's statutorily required to come to us in the reserve account every year without fail at town meeting. Nobody ever even asks. And it comes in and it just sits there. So, you know, our argument is not overly credible for what we need to do. The fall down point with that is, you know, at a certain point, the trust has become very active in the past year. And to continue those particular programs like rental assistance, mortgage assistance, doing a lot of the programs that the trust should be managing on its own, and we have the ability to do so, is going to require CPA funds to support. And whether they say that's good or not, I mean, it's something that should always, of course, get to the warrant. But we need to have that relationship. And the relationship needs to last longer than our particular terms on this particular trust. So that's why I don't like an at-large position, because in 5 years we can institute programs here that have a very beneficial effect on the community at large, but we can't make sure that they're in perpetuity. Now we can't guarantee any of that anyways. You know, we don't know what's going to happen in 10 years, but we can provide for our particular programs and the relationship between the trust and the CPC to make sure that at very least the trust always has representation on the CPC to drive that argument. It could be that in 10 years, you know, they stack the trust with people that don't want to do anything and don't want to give out anything. And a lot of communities do that. I hope that doesn't happen here. But I also don't want to have somebody say that we shouldn't be allowed to do this or we don't want to do this because it's been stagnant for a good deal of time. We're exploring things, we're getting awarded grants, you know, we're partnering with developers on big projects, you know, we're finding opportunities because we're looking now. So I want to make sure that if we're building something that's very good for the community and the health of the community for years to come, not only just to get us to the 10% safe harbor mark, we need to make sure we establish ourselves as an institution in the town. One of those components is going to be on the CPC, because it's a primary source of funds that are never going to get funded in town meeting. You know, I mean, that's kind of what CPA is all about. You know, they were talking about it ad nauseum the other night. It's for stuff that the general community is just not going to want to do. It's so easy to get in our way to do something that's good for the Commonwealth and fellow man, with all the apparatuses that are placed in front of us. I mean, look what we have to do for 25 Worcester Street. You know, we had to go to town meeting to get the land. We have a deed restriction on the land. We try to get the deed restriction lifted so we can have a more positive impact on the development that we're proposing. and we have a 3-hour meeting with 35 angry people here. You just, by nature of the quickiness of all this stuff, you see how frustrating efforts are on the select board meetings and the ZBA meetings before that, and then our meeting with them, which was actually fairly well done. You need to make sure that we have all those things in place so it carries on beyond us here. It just needs to fundamentally, change the view of us. I mean, if you saw that meeting the other night, I mean, it was just, you're kind of probably blown away by it.
Yeah, a little bit. How old are you?
And it detracts from our mission. I'm on 5 minutes.
One of the things they kept mentioning was, well, you had just pointed out there wasn't a affordable housing trust, but when the CPC was, started, they kept going back and forth on that not being the case, why there's a housing authority member versus a affordable housing. Can you explain that a little bit so I understand?
So Bruce, could I tackle that one? Because I did want to address this. So back when the CPA, the Community Preservation Act, was written, the statute that enables it actually prescribes the people that you have to have on there. And one of them is somebody from the housing authority. So it was written it's 20 years ago. It might have been 2000. It might have been earlier than that. But the housing trust as an apparatus, that statute didn't exist until the mid 2000s thereafter. And ours wasn't adopted until 2007. So the option for the legislature to even consider having a housing trust member be mandated to be put on the Community Preservation Committee wasn't there. So that didn't exist. So we all get that the housing authority guys got to be there. But we can't do this. Nothing we can do about that unless Beacon Hill is going to rewrite the statute, and they're not going to do that for us. So what our option is to say, okay, let's amend our local bylaw, and we can mandate the housing authority person be there as well, and have an affordable housing trust person. Unfortunately, to Paul Scarlett's point, what that does is you're taking the at-large member off of there. Okay. I understand and I hear him when he says that, and I understand that there are people who have been on there for a lot of years, have got a lot of experience, and that experience is valuable to the board. And the perspective of somebody who doesn't come in from a certain fiefdom might also be valuable to the Community Preservation Committee. That all might be true. But what we do know is this. We do know that since the CPA was enacted in Grafton, every year we've gotten our, $40,000 or our 10%, right? So on average, the spend for affordable housing for CPC over the course of its history has been about 10%. The only time we've asked for more money than that was last year for the COVID rental relief, right? So therefore, the money that's spent on historical preservation, on things like One Grafton Common, and the rest of it has far outdwarfed what has been spent on affordable housing. And as you saw from the meeting, the attitudes there, and as Bruce pointed out, it's really easy to defeat an affordable housing proposal, right? And if you have people on CPA who aren't supporting it, if you have people on the Board of Selectmen who aren't supporting it, and the only people who are supporting around the Affordable Housing Trust, at town meeting, we've got a real uphill battle. But if you can engage with CPA members and get a majority of them to say that, yes, this is a quality proposal and we want to fund it, then it goes a long way rhetorically at town meeting to get these sort of things approved when your friends and neighbors who are on these committees are in the know say, yes, this is something you can support. This isn't something you need to be afraid of. This is something the community needs. This is something that specific people need. I think that goes such a long way toward the legitimacy of the concept of affordable housing in Grafton. So there's just like a whole host of reasons why this makes so much sense. I think the town meeting needs to hear that. Institutions
carry weight. As much as people want to talk about, the democracy and all that stuff like that, typically you're less than 1% of your voting populace that comes to a town meeting. Of that town meeting, about 35% of it's your boards and committees.
Yeah.
at the very least, and this is going back 15 years that I've been watching, the only hot button issues that drive people there are typically, your big spends, your high schools, the library, stuff like that. So to have a member of a particular body that's supporting a particular grant proposal coming forward. So like, for example, 25 Worcester Street, we go out to RFP, we're leveraging trust assets, which is the property, and a couple $100,000 from CPA, and the CPC is on board with it. The grant gets funneled through them. It goes, to town meeting, and anybody asks the CPC what they think about this. It's another body that's in front of it, and then the select board are in front of it. And as you build those building blocks, you can make your way through a town meeting a lot easier than you can in other facets. It's also, if you're just simply going to the ZBA, and they said it to the select board, and we're going to have to hold them to it. But yeah, if the select board are behind it, it's in the lit process, and then you have a dozen other members of other publicly elected or appointed bodies that are in support of it. It becomes far more challenging for the ZBA to outright just say, we don't want to do this. And that's something that we're going to have to consider on projects now that we're in safe harbor, because we still have a mission of effect. So I guess I want to make sure that we're productive in this conversation and what we're actually trying to orchestrate. If it were just me and I were moving forward with it, which of course it's not, but let me just shoot this out there. I would propose that we would change the GHA member to a trust member. Something that probably should have been done in the past, but I don't care about that. I think the current position is Jim Gallagher's position.
Are we allowed to do that though? I don't.
Yeah, we're not allowed to do that.
Nope,
Yeah.
we're not.
Yeah.
So we can't.
He's got to be on there by statute.
Yeah, that's what
Our only option is to swap in
at large.
a member at large.
Yeah.
Yep. So we go from 4 to 3 members at large.
So even though the statute says affordable housing
Yeah.
and GHA in it, we have to go with the GHA one?
It specifically delineates a housing authority member as someone who's got to be on there. Even though the goal of CPA is to promote affordable housing, there again, they use the closest adjacent person that they could find as the housing person.
Well, I guess I used Wiki too much.
I could talk to Dave Meridian about it, but
That'd be my
Well, we're not going to enact legislation to change that type of thing.
Right.
So I guess if we're in the sandbox, then we're stuck in the sandbox. I thought that position, clearly annotated in the general law that it was supposed to be for that position, but I guess I read it wrong.
That's state
So-
or Grafton.
State.
Yeah, that's why we can't.
Bruce, I think another thing that we need to pursue though is we do need to be asking CPC for additional funds. We need to make sure that relationship with Jim is well developed and that he's aware of what we're doing and he's advocating for us as well. So, regardless of what happens with, specific membership, whoever's our housing authority rep, we've got to have that good, solid relationship. And, one of the sort of talking points from CPC is, we've funded everything that they've requested. So, that's the 10% they don't really have a choice on. But, the one recent thing that we asked them for, which was the rental assistance, they did fund. So, if we want additional funds and we want advocacy, we also need to be partnering with CPC and be asking them for what we need. And then if we don't get it, it makes a stronger argument, right? That we should have representation on CPC.
Can we go to the GHA and get a trust member on GHA?
No, it's elected.
It's elected, yeah.
They're 5-year terms, so I don't even know if there's one up this year. It's a process to get on GHA.
So I guess
The member at large, that's a bit of a false economy too. If you look at who the members at large are, and the types of boards, committees, and trusts that they're on, and boards of directors and whatnot, we have a lot of representation of recreation, open space, conservation, historic. That's something that we need to look at too. It's, the members at large, it's part of the same group of people that volunteer for a lot of different things in town. And so, I would encourage everybody to look at sort of membership of our current members at large and see where their passions lie.
Well, either way, it's going to be a two-pronged approach. So we're gonna find somebody on the trust to apply for one of those.
Husband already did.
Oh, all right. Well, I guess we have more than we can get some representation there that has an affinity for the trust. I mean, that's certainly something that we should do. We have a friendly select board to us. We need to make sure we take advantage of that opportunity. But I'm with Eddie on this, and a couple other Eric as well. We need something that,
See if we can formalize and institutionalize it.
So,
And I do want to point out. I mean, I may be incorrect here, but I watched the CPC meeting where they discussed this, and people can have their opinions on that, and everybody does, but there were several CPC members who were explicitly in favor of this. I believe Mr. Gallagher was as well. He's the Housing Authority representative. So it's not like, it's not like everybody on CPC is against this. And if I recall, the only vote that they took, the motion was to send a letter in support, and that failed, but they did not send a letter opposing. So it's just kind of, they did nothing, which is different from explicitly opposing in my mind. So I don't want to make assumptions about what's going to happen at town meeting. I don't think we should. And I think, I would suspect that there would be several members of CPC, speaking for themselves potentially at the meeting, that speak up in support of this.
all right. So let's move it forward to a little bit more of logistics perspective. So as a board with the capacity to issue its own warrant language, do we approach the select board and say this is what we want to propose, and if they're not going to do it on their own, we do it, or do we want to go a citizens petition route? If so, we need to draft some language, and we need to do it relatively quickly. Matt, when does the warrant close?
You got me.
All right. Hey Dan, when does the warrant close?
Let me see if I can Google it up real quick.
All right, well,
Yeah.
he's Googling. Let's talk about the framework of what we're trying to propose. So what we as a trust are positioning, what we're going to have to argue for on town meeting floor, is that we would like one of the at-large positions or two of the at-large positions. Just one? All right.
Just one.
Just one. Become an official affordable housing trust's representative position. I think there was language that went from the town administrator's office to the CPC that we can probably mimic. And I believe I sent that to everybody.
I don't think you did.
Either way, we can get to it in fairly short order and send it back if somebody were to search their email. Is that what I'm getting the impression that we want to do?
Yeah. Do you want a motion?
I don't want a motion yet. What I want is a volunteer to do the legwork.
Dan's Googling, so he's self-volunteered.
I was going to say, I'm busy Googling. I can't volunteer right now.
Volunteer to write something for the warrant article.
Well, there's some other information that we need to track down too. One of the things that, if we're proposing a warrant article, we want to make sure that we have enough time to have our own hearing process, and we need to vote on it officially. We do not have something that we can vote on tonight on our agenda. We're going to need to see the language.
Yeah, I'm happy to volunteer to be the liaison or whatever it is with the select board and TA's office and such.
You know what's great about volunteering? Dan didn't volunteer, so you can just tell him to do a whole bunch of stuff. And he's gonna do it for you.
So Evan did send an email out with warrant language to definitely CPC, and I think to the trust as well. Eric, I'll send that over to you just so that you have that as a starter.
Okay.
All right. The other thing that Dan's efforting now is when we need to submit by.
doesn't it close 30 days before? Because we're already 30 days. We're less than 30 days. So I don't even know if we're going to be able to do this. Town
So-
meeting's on May 9th.
There's a deadline for citizen petitions to
That's
get
come
in
and gone.
for the select board to be required to include them. But I don't think that same deadline applies to committees putting articles in. And I think the select board has the authority, or at least they're not
It's
not
next
taken
week.
away from them to add things in before they close the warrant.
Colleen said that voting on the warrant on the 19th, which is next week. So
Okay.
it looks more like we'd be focusing on October town meeting.
No, I don't accept that. I want to do this regular town meeting, and I mean, Matt, you have the verbiage. Why don't we just put it on screen tonight? I'm sure it's a paragraph. Let's just vote on it. I don't want. I mean, the rest of the trust can speak, but I don't want this at October town meeting. It's smaller and it's pushed into the future.
Yeah, then we'll be accused of like trying to avoid the big group anyway.
Okay, so logistically speaking, I have a discussion item on it. I don't have an actionable item. Do we want to meet? The soonest we can meet is Thursday or Tuesday before that, but we need to talk to Evan to make sure that it's part of his packet, because their packet's going out tomorrow.
We can always amend a packet if they know something's coming.
Yeah, I mean, the packet's not a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, except
Bruce,
5,000 people that are
I'm
watching
sending you
this,
the
their
language.
OML minds just went ballistic.
Yep.
So I want to make sure
You know,
we're cognizant
we-
of.
We would need to do another meeting. And we need to post it, obviously.
Monday's a holiday.
Yeah, Patriots Day.
Why? I don't understand. Why can't we vote on it? The agenda item says warrant article discussion. Is it because it's only discussion?
It's not an action.
All right, fine. Then we'll post a meeting. We'll do it on Zoom. That'll be the one topic.
I'm good tomorrow.
Well, we got to do 48 hours.
48
notice, so-
hours, but Monday's a holiday.
Can't be a weekend.
Is it your hard deadline on the 19th?
Yeah, I don't even know if we can post a meeting, Bruce. The
No, we can't. There's not enough time.
because of the holiday, we would have had to have posted it today, unfortunately.
Well, either way, pass that language around. If somebody has it, can you if you send it to Eric, Eric can put it up on the screen for everybody to review it.
Yeah, I'll send it to everybody on the trust right now.
You might have it in yours. I know.
Yeah, I have it. You didn't send it to me.
Where'd you get it from? Should have gone out to the bulk mailer.
All right, I just sent it out to everybody.
Can you share?
Yeah, I don't want all my tabs to show up. Hold on.
Eric, your tabs are showing.
Yes. All right, hold on.
And Dan, we don't need a public hearing on it. So that I did check on. What I didn't check on was the when they were signing the warrant. What holiday is Monday?
Patriots.
That's a,
Marathon Monday.
keep forgetting April school vacation is next week.
All right, just give me a second. I'm pulling it up now. All right, can people see this? All right.
Yep.
So that's the language that the TA proposed to the CPC/select board originally. So I'm assuming that Evan did his due diligence here. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I'm sure he basically copy pasted the language in the bylaws for the other required, Concom, etc.
Everybody, just take a minute and go through it.
Or actually, he just copy and pasted this and just made that quick edit.
If it's the desire of the board, Eric, what I guess I will do is we'll coalesce around this. We'll vote on this particular language. We'll send it over to the select board via Matt, and it's up to them to allow it through on the warrant.
So there does need to be an edit here. So after we change the number of at-large members, it then goes on to say at-large members shall be appointed in the following initial terms: 1 for 1 year, 2 for 2-year terms, and 1 for 3-year terms. That's 4. That's 4 at-large members. So you would have to determine which at-large member you're taking away. I assume you would eliminate one of the 2-year term members. So you would have one member who's only a 2-year term instead of 2.
Does the next sentence take care of that though, Ed? Because it says I think that's for the initial founding of the CPC.
I think you're right. I guess I just don't want the language to be inconsistent where you've got 3 members and then the next sentence suggests there's 4.
It's almost like that sentence about the staggered terms could just be deleted because it's irrelevant at this point.
Probably at this point, right?
Yeah. So what is the timeline? I'm not clear on this. Like, are we able to do this or not?
So here's my dilemma as a chair set up the meeting. I put this under discussion item.
Yeah.
To move it from a discussion to an actionable item, it's not necessarily a big thing, but we're making the sausage now. We're all here. I guess we can do it. But I would have liked it to gotten to the point where we said what we wanted to do. We had somebody to draft it, and then we come back as an official meeting with it on as an action item, and we'd vote on it, and then we would send it on its merry way to the select.
That's definitely the right way to do it. This isn't a warrant article either, right? So this is just membership of a bylaw.
So we got to figure out the actual motion, who's going to be responsible for it. There's a little bit more to it than just what we're doing now.
I want to support this, but this is not just in this timeline. I think it's not advisable.
We also got to push it over to their packet by tomorrow for it to make their packet for Monday. Well, actually, did you guys post today? Because Monday's a holiday.
Go ahead, Dan.
So I just want to say, Matt, if you want to support this, you still can on the select board. Like I just want to point that out.
Okay.
Yeah, because aren't we? Isn't that our only avenue at this point? Like it would have to be the select board submitting the warrant on our behalf. Is that true? Or
No, I don't think so. You guys would submit it to us. We would put a placeholder in and vote on it on Tuesday.
Yeah.
But we would need the actual language from you guys, though. And
But
it would.
the select board can put the article on themselves. They don't need the Affordable Housing Trust to request it or vote to put it on.
Yeah, that's correct. But you saw
The select board already voted to not put this, or we decided not to put this on.
Yeah.
So I
But
don't.
you can undecide not to put it on. Is what we're suggesting.
We could.
Like I understand the objections and stuff like that. This is a little too messy for my appetite to do it this quickly, and not what I intended. If we had another week, I would certainly say let's come back on Tuesday, and then post another meeting and make it go. I understand your displeasure with it, Eric, but it's not. it does not lend itself for us to getting the town meeting, because the argument is going to be framed that we're just rushing this down, and it's going to be one more hurdle we actually get over.
This isn't rushed. This has been discussed for the last 3 months.
I hate it when people say
I'm
rushed.
hearing excuses.
What in Grafton is ever rushed?
Yeah, I'm hearing excuses.
This is a very simple idea. It's like deciding to go to the grocery store, but taking like 3 months and 4 committee votes to do it. Like, this is pretty straightforward.
I get that, but you guys have been to the same town meeting as I have. So, I mean, I don't mind, because we're going to put it on their agenda. They could very well say, no, this didn't come in the appropriate amount of time. And we wanted to see other, things. So they can deny us access to it. So if we want to vote to send it over to them, let's start drafting a motion and put the rest of the details behind it now. It's only 9:15. My bedtime's not until 10. So we can have this part of the discussion and keep it moving. I'm not going to get in the way of what the trust wants to do. There's really no open meeting law violation here for what we're actually trying to get accomplished. We do not need to hold a public hearing for a warrant article that we're proposing be sent through. It would be up to the select board to deny us, and they very well may. I'm purely saying, when this actually gets through its process, it's going to be one more argumentative point that we're going to have to defeat on town meeting. If we want to go out and find 80 people that will come to a town meeting and vote for us, fine.
Welcome to the affordable housing, man. You know this. Like, look, if we wanted like non-argumentative stuff to go to town meeting about, I'd be on recreation or open space. Honestly.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Why don't we just go around and determine if people want to move forward, or just give your opinion? It sounds like Bruce is I don't want to talk for people, but I would like to push this forward. I don't think that this actually adds any material difficulty to trying to pass this at town meeting. I think there are plenty of baked in arguments that are going to be used anyway.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I think that we should continue pursuing this tonight. If, I am not an expert on OML, but it sounds like this is not a violation. And you know what? If there's an issue, we can self-report.
And we will. Happily. Don't have to ask me twice.
All right, so we know where Eric and Dan is at. I'm going to start with the room first. Brittany is the only other person in the room.
Lucky me. What's the worst that can happen?
There we go.
The worst that could happen is it doesn't make it onto the agenda or the warrant. Yes, we're not really playing with life or death situations here.
No one's going to jail. We're good.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing that somebody would say to me is, why did you put it as a discussion item if you were going to take action on it?
Humans make mistakes.
No, I didn't make a mistake. I knew exactly what I was doing when I put this together. But I'm allowed to exactly change my mind.
True.
So, Dan? I'll go back to Google, Dan.
I really feel like if we don't have the select board support, it just doesn't have a chance. And I think if it fails this time, bringing it back another time it's just gonna be like, oh, they tried that before. Why are they trying it again? Well, it's another one of those BS arguments against that we hear a lot. And I guess I'm just extremely disappointed that the select board, asked us what they could do to support affordable housing, and that's we're not getting support. But I think if it goes to town meeting and the select board won't stand behind it, it's just not going to pass. And I think it's if we could get the select board to support it, that would be great, and I think we should go for it. But if this select board won't support affordable housing, what's the point?
All right.
So that's you're not inclined.
I would really like to see our select board rep fight for this more on the select board. I feel like that's part of the role, and if we're not getting that, then I don't think anyone else on the select board is going to really be fighting for this. And if people on the select board are opposed to it, that's really going to just kill it at town meeting.
Well, I mean, that's the danger. That's part of the argument that we've been having a little bit here is, you know, and I'm not going to use the word rushed again, but that would be the flavor of it. Just for my own thought process, the people that want to move forward with this immediately, what's the hesitation with waiting until October town meeting?
I think you're going to have a less favorable select board at that point, or at
Oh.
least one that's not any more
Okay.
favorable than we have now. And, you know, again, as with all things affordable housing, there is a certain degree of urgency with what we want to do here. You're into a new fiscal year, you're into new budget requests for projects, for CPC money. And then, you know, we're going to be that much further along in Worcester Street and on GSX. Who knows what money we might possibly need. So, you know, all these things, you know, there's an alacrity to this and an urgency for the need for housing. And I think as advocates for affordable housing, we ought to recognize that urgency and act appropriately.
Okay. That's valid.
Well, Matt, I mean, you're kind of the most important person here because we would be relying on you to make the case for us. What's your opinion? I know you've kind of touched on it, but I haven't heard you talk.
Yeah, well, it's difficult when you're getting punched in the face left and right, feeling like a bit of a punching bag in this meeting. And I guess that's just par for the course. I don't think it's a great idea. If the rest of the trust really wants to do it, I'll advocate for it in our meeting, and I'll be as influential as I can to have us put it on. But I think a better approach would be to bring it to town meeting on October. And in the meantime, if we're not getting the support we need from CPC, request it, redevelop that relationship with Jim, and try to develop a more cooperative relationship with them. I took some beating from them the other night in trying to create a more cooperative relationship with them. So I know how difficult it is. It's not a simple thing, but I don't know. I guess that's my thoughts. If the trust feels really strongly that you want me to go to the select board and advocate for it, I'll do it. Absolutely.
Okay. Logistically speaking, if it were to come from you to them and they would need to sponsor it and you guys have already said no, you're not sponsoring this. So you would have to say, the select board would have to say no to entertaining our submission because we would want the placeholder there. So we can come up with the motion later. We just need the placeholder. Can we do that?
The warrant's actually closing though. And I think the language has to be in the warrant as it's closed. I don't think we can put a placeholder.
You guys vote on you guys aren't voting on the motion. Are you? I don't think you are. We've had motions come in later. I mean, the article that you have there is Article 34. That should be everything that we need. We should be able to just say, hey, we want to send this over. Put this on the warrant for us. I mean, this should be, we don't have to even talk 5 more minutes about this. We should be able to send this over. You guys find the appropriate place in the warrant, whether it's Article 37 or 12 or 2. And then we'll provide you with the motion when we go to town meeting. And say it's from us instead of blank at the bottom. I mean, stop. Somebody, and you've signed a few warrants before. This should be just like any other one that comes in from a board or committee.
Yeah, I don't see why it would be any different.
Unless I'm not recalling it correctly.
Okay,
but
so what you're asking for, Bruce, is a placeholder from the Affordable Housing Trust sponsoring an article for this change.
And then this
essentially.
article. That should be easy. The very worst that could happen at that point is it gets passed over at town meeting, which of course you can argue for or against, not like has been in the past, but I guess that would be the worst thing that could happen. Is somebody could get up and say, well, we didn't feel this was done in a prepared in a sufficient amount of time. And our argument would be, well, no, it really has. This has been cycled around and it's been, looked at by the select board quite a bit.
Well, it hasn't, though. We haven't. I mean, I guess we talked about it, but we haven't looked at any language. Look, this is a pretty simple thing, right? The language changes that I'm looking at are very minor. So, but I think for the placeholder, we need that. I think we need some proposed language to put in as that placeholder.
So you need more verbiage to say what chapter 1 establishment of membership. This is how we've changed bylaws in the past.
Yeah, well, usually I think the warrant article say something along the lines of, I need to be Googling here.
Something like to see if the town will amend bylaw, whatever,
Yes.
as follows, and then at the end it's, or whatever action relative thereto, that part, right?
Yeah, that's the motion.
That's
that we can do that. What you guys are voting on is the actual substantive pieces of the warrant.
All right, well, send it over. And we'll go through our process.
Okay, we'll spend a couple more minutes though. We had a couple questions on this. Are we comfortable with this language?
I don't know. What does the lawyer think?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it should be amended to something along the lines, again, just to take care of that last sentence. The at-large member shall be appointed. That sentence can come out, and then you would edit the next sentence. All subsequent terms of at-large members will be for 3 years. And all members of the committee may be reappointed. That's all.
Oops. How do I strike through this? Okay, so just delete this one, and then we're good.
Yeah, and then just, I guess essentially what I'm saying is make that sentence make sense.
Yeah.
So it refers to the at-large members.
Strike through right there. On the right,
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm
Go
like,
down.
yeah, the problem is I have like the video thing over it. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, they're there.
Okay, so strike through that, and is that it?
I think so.
I think there's a little bit more you said, Ed.
All subsequent terms of at-large members will be for 3 years. So subsequent can go.
Yeah.
All terms of at-large members will be for 3 years. That's it.
Of at-large members. Throw that in there.
Where?
I think you said all.
Yeah,
terms
after
of
terms, just
at-large.
add at-large members will be for 3 years.
All terms of.
Oh, right here of at large members.
Mhm.
All right, let me just bold that so I know I. Okay.
What are you looking at me for?
You're the chair. What do we do next?
Listen, now it's on me. All right, just for
You've been doing this longer than me.
Dan, the public hearing is just from my planning board days. Is to submit a zoning amendment, which is different than a general bylaw amendment. It requires a
That's what I
public hearing
thought.
process. Yeah. So I overstepped there. We don't need to do that. Okay. let's read the language again, so everybody's comfortable with it, and then I will entertain a motion on the actual language, and then we're gonna, inside that motion, I would require just who to direct it to, and then we'll see if it makes their packet. Dan, can you check online? Has their packet been posted already?
It has been. But again, the packet can be
that can be amended
updated, and it is updated regularly. On Friday afternoon if there's stuff that needs to go in there.
Yeah. Okay. This is a little bit more of a bomb than a late edition of a contract that needs to be signed that just came across the desk on Friday for some paving outfit. Okay.
Oh, actually, sorry, I'm just getting a text from Colleen. The packet hasn't been posted yet, just the agenda.
Well, it's got to be posted. It's Thursday, right? Should have been
No, the
posted.
agenda can be
agenda
posted
has-
today, but
The meeting's
package
posted,
doesn't
the
post
The
it.
packet
packet did
isn't.
not go out yet.
Right.
Okay. Does really?
Yeah, package usually pretty late.
Why is that? All right. Anyway,
It's dependent on staff.
All right. Okay, so I have a clear consensus on what we're doing here. The language that we have right here in front of us that everybody has the opportunity to read through and see is what we're going to send over to the select board with the idea that they will put this as an article supported or presented by the trust as an official body in town, and that we will be on the hook for, because I don't think they're going to support it. I don't think they'll deny us access to it unless there's some credible argument that's made. I can't foresee it, but who knows? I couldn't foresee 12 hours of meeting about this, which should be an absolute no-brainer anyways, but here we are. All right. Well, Eric.
I'm not the motion guy on this one.
I move that the board approve
The trust.
the trust. That the trust approve the community preservation article as amended and submit this amended article to the select board for inclusion in the warrant for approval by the town at May town meeting.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Dan has some discussion.
So yeah, I guess just before we actually move forward with the vote, having it listed as a discussion item on the agenda, does that actually prevent us from taking a vote? Because that seems like that doesn't seem very straightforward of a restriction to me.
I guess, Dan, this particular discussion that you're having doesn't have any bearing on this particular motion. We should have had this discussion before the, and we kind of did. It's my prerogative to do it. So if I'm going to allow the motion, then it's in a discussion item and it's actionable. It's not how I typically practice when I run a meeting. But I understand the time constraints that we're under. And this is something that the trust wants to do, so I'm not going to get in the way of it.
Okay, yeah, it was just, I think I agree that it's up to the chair to decide whether to allow it, but I just want to make sure that we're clear on that and that we're not, because it sounded a little bit like some people might think that this is an open meeting law violation, but we'll just do it and see. And I that's not where I'm coming from it at. I think we should just make that clear.
It was tongue in
pretty
cheek.
sure
Dan.
the chair has the authority to allow this motion with the agenda as it is.
Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence. I'm going to allow the motion anyways because we're in the discussion of that motion. So with the affirmative, I will send it on its merry way. Any other discussion rather? All right, hearing none. I'm going to roll call this. Dan, I'm going to start with you.
Aye.
Ed,
Yes.
Matt,
Aye.
Brittany.
Aye.
Did I call you Murphy before?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm very sorry.
All right, R.I.P. Pretty much.
Not the blonde type over here.
Aye.
Spinning eye. Wasn't she the actress from a
Yeah.
long time ago?
Yeah,
She's dead.
she passed away. Drugs.
Yep.
Oh,
Or maybe not. Debatable.
Did the motion pass?
yeah. I think it was unanimous. So here's Matt. Can you send this over to Evan tomorrow? With some of the rationale and the explanation behind it. If he wants to get in touch with me, then let him know.
Absolutely. Yep. No worries.
I'll send the amended language out to the trust alias right now, just so everybody has a copy. Just because we're still on this discussion item, correct? I know one of the concerns of the select board is the tenor of the discussion that's going to happen at town meeting. I don't really see how the trust would be responsible for that going downhill. My opinion is that the trust and anybody who wants to advocate for this at town meeting just plainly state the facts. There's no need to get into any personal call-outs. The trust is simply asking for representation on the CPC, and that's it. If we have to respond to certain things, I hope everybody does so in a respectful manner and just stay focused on what we're trying to do, is just get representation on the CPC. So I don't know if the select board needs us to write a letter that says we'll be on our best behavior, or
Nope.
you can just communicate that to them.
I guess.
Thank you. So, Colleen sent me the language that was prepared for a proposed amendment change from last fall. So I'll get that over to Cindy. I think Evan's on vacation tomorrow. I'm not sure about Peter, but what I'll strive to do is to get the language that was proposed for the recent fall town meeting, which makes a similar type of change, put in as a placeholder in the warrant that we consider on Tuesday.
What's wrong with
If
this
that makes
language
sense.
that we just voted on?
The language is fine. The article will be something along the lines of what Dan said, it's to see if the town will vote, blah, blah, blah.
Oh yeah, the standard
Yep,
dialogue that's in the front. Yes.
exactly.
Okay, so this is a month away. Now that we've gotten to the point, we're going to need a point person that's going to speak on our behalf. I think is probably the best way to approach it. So I'm not particularly concerned with getting support from the select board, getting support from the CPC. I think we've had enough of those discussions between those two parties. I honestly don't care about fiefdoms. I don't care about cliques. I don't care about any of that. This is my one mission, is to promote affordable housing, and this is what we're doing. I think I made myself clear when in the 5 minutes I talked before about why this is a necessity moving forward with some of our broader goals. I think we can convey that message at town meeting. To be quite honest, if we stick with that particular messaging, I'm not really sure what anybody else is going to do. I'm not really sure how you can defend the position. Our position on it is, being filled by somebody who has absolutely no role in affordable housing, at least with
CPC
regards
funding.
to CPA funding. This is a no-brainer. We're spending a lot of money. We have a lot of projects, and we're doing a lot of good work. And I guess we just need to speak for ourselves instead of relying on other bodies to do it for us. So, yeah, that's what the start of what we're doing now, I suppose. Is everybody in general agreement with that statement?
Yes.
So who's going to be our spokesperson? Is that the way we want to do it?
I don't know if we need to decide that right now.
You want that on the next meeting?
Yeah, we can do that next time.
Okay.
I mean,
Well, then that's the other way we can go with it. I will put this on the not next week's meeting, the week following, as an item. Let this digest, I guess, a little bit, and then come to that meeting with some ideas about our best approach. Because we're going to be asked to present on it.
Sure.
So, and then think about motion language and all the other technicalities that are going to come as part of this. The select board are probably not going to hold our hand on this. So, I think, all right, so that puts that to bed for tonight till tomorrow. Trust member reports. So I kind of put this on there as a, subcommittees or select board representation and stuff like that, and also for people who are doing some work on their own. So one of the things that Matt had been working on was the the Facebook account and gaining access. So just I put this here as kind of a placeholder for everybody to kind of let us know where they're at with some of the individual endeavors that they were on. If anybody has anything, let me know.
I don't think we really advanced the discussion on the sort of public engagement discussion. We didn't really have a full complement that night. So I suggest we just put that onto a future meeting. So just, I guess, a couple updates for me. We met with Eastlake this week. They are, from all accounts, a really good developer. You guys saw the community impact analysis, I think, as well as the basic LIP overview that they went for the two. This is for Upton Road and Pleasant Street. Those look like pretty good developments from what I can tell. They brought to our most recent meeting a detailed traffic study. They also proactively had a community outreach meeting for each of those proposals. They, I guess, got about 25 community members in attendance for those outreach meetings, which I thought was pretty good, actually. So they documented all of their concerns that they got and their responses to those concerns. It's all in the select board packet, so I would recommend people go look at that. It's what you would expect. It's traffic and it's density and its impact on the schools and your most common concerns that people would have. But I thought that their approach to this LIP or these LIPs generally has been very collaborative. We asked them to send us links to the meeting with Auburn, which is a similar development that they engaged with recently. So they sent us the links to all the select board meetings that they had in Auburn as well. I'll go on to this in my second update, I guess, but we have to figure out how to navigate through this now that we're in safe harbor. I think, well, the other thing that they sent us to were the draft LIP application. So if anybody wants any of that material, just email me and I'm happy to provide that stuff for anybody that's interested in. These LIP projects are going to need some advocacy though. My ask to the trust is to advocate for these projects. Obviously in safe harbor, they're going to go to ZBA and, our circumstances are different in Grafton now that we're in safe harbor. So I think some advocacy with some key groups is going to be crucial to getting these proposals through the ZBA. So on that topic, I'm concerned generally about affordable housing production now that we're in safe harbor. And what I don't want to do is to just not actually have a conversation about it and start the discussion about how we're going to stay in safe harbor, how we're going to continue development of affordable housing. I think we should be pursuing some inclusionary zoning, maybe, to think about, you know, if developers can't go through 40B now, what's Direct Grafton's deliberate approach to, you know, to giving developers by right zones to build density and build affordable housing in certain areas that make sense. And you know, it's not really a conversation that we've been having necessarily, but we're at a pivot point, I think, and I just don't want to let it all happen without bringing some key people in. So I guess, you know, I haven't talked to the select board about this, but this is the agenda item that's up. General thinking is we need to at least have a couple of workshops and bring in some key stakeholders, maybe even think about putting together a small working group with people that are on ZBA, planning, our planner, you know, Affordable Housing Trust, to sort of tease out, you know, what do we do now that we're in safe harbor? I think there's a lot to discuss and plan. There may be some policy that we want to put together. There may be some zoning changes. I don't really know, but it just occurred to me that, you know, that it represents a substantial change in the circumstances in Grafton. And I just want to make sure that there is a robust discussion going on. And, you know, ZBA was great about saying, hey, if the select board supports a lit project, then, you know, we'll be behind it too. The body language was a little bit suspect, I guess. It didn't look to me like that necessarily was what was going to happen. So I want to tease that out a little bit with them in terms of, you know, they use the word, if it's good for the town, we'll support it. What does that mean? You know, and when we send these lip endorsements along, what can we expect? And also, you know, the other thing is we have more leverage now. So, you know, some of the types of things that were brought up as things that got attached to lips contingent on select board approvals were things like parks and trails and that sort of stuff. You know, what's possible now that we're in safe harbor? How much more could we be asking for? You know,
From
So, Matt, if I can, I have lots and lots of thoughts on this, and I'm going to try to keep my comments brief. I appreciate you bringing this up. I think it's really important to deal with. What I heard from ZBA was, I think, something a little bit different than maybe what you heard. What I heard them say was our initial predisposition now that we're in safe harbor to a lit project would probably be no. And that, I think that is probably going to be a pretty typical attitude, not only of people on ZBA, but of the general community. I think there is a...
Well, we saw it tonight, right?
I think there's a predisposition toward thinking, kind of like Proposition 2.5 works, right? Like, so if you're spending beyond Prop 2.5, you're doing something wrong. It's an arbitrary statutory marker, and it's the same sort of thing with affordable housing. Well, if you've met safe harbor, then according to the statute, you've done enough. That's not at all it. What the safe harbor provision does is it's the carrot that goes along with the 40B stick, right? So if we beat you enough to get into action and actually create some housing, we're going to give you a break. So maybe you try a little bit harder to put a few more units in a particular development, then you get a break for a couple of years, you get that local control back. But people who don't think enough about the long-term impacts are going to mistake that for being the end zone. That's the touchdown. You spike the ball, you move on. And as you've rightly sussed out, if you then go on without inclusionary zoning and you build a few more developments here or there, then you've increased the overall housing supply and you've decreased the amount of percentage of SHI in your community, right? So a sensible inclusionary zoning policy would, if you ever got completely out from 40B and you got that 10% of the units in the community, you could keep that with inclusionary zoning, and you benefit the town in the long run, and you benefit the people who benefit from affordable housing. I think one of the things that we haven't done a good enough job of, and I am trying to do a better job of, is not just speak toward affordable housing as a means of getting out from under 40B and regaining local control, but really just helping people. You know, there is yet another, and again, the way you framed this was good because there's yet another. I posted this on Planet Grafton yesterday, but there is a study that came down from the legislature, and the study was entitled "The Future of Work Commission." Okay, seemingly would have nothing to do in terms of a layman's view on affordable housing, but it has everything to do with affordable housing because Massachusetts is losing employees because nobody wants to pay $1 million for grandpa's old rundown World War II built townhouse. Nobody wants to do that, and everybody's looking around going, why am I doing this? I could buy a $500,000 home in North Carolina and bank that extra $600,000 for my retirement or my kids' college. And I'm seeing it in you know, anecdotally in my friends who are getting out of here, but I'm hearing it from people who are first-time home buyers who are like, I can't do this. You know, we cannot do this for our family moving forward. And those are the people that we represent. And it's also, again, why, like, I don't want to sit on a warrant article. Like, there has to be some urgency to this. And the thing about arguing for affordable housing and being on this trust is it's not enough just to say, okay, I'm in support of this. I'm going to take some votes and you know, I'm going to help plan this project. Really, you have to be a zealous advocate. And part of being a zealous advocate, I think, on this issue is understanding that simply because we're in a safe harbor doesn't mean we're letting anybody on ZBA off the hook here. The way ZBA ought to view these projects is no different than they viewed them before. Does this project make sense for this community? And this community can't just be defined by the people who are living here now. This community is, people have to start thinking of it as, who are we going to be servicing in the years to come? The children that are born here, the people that are who are working now are going to be aging in place in 20 years, and the people who have yet to live here are going to need sensible planning, and the LIP process is part of it. So yes, we can get a little bit more out of a developer. You know, sidewalks, maybe a contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust. Those things would be fantastic. But at the end of the day, what is fantastic is development that is environmentally friendly by having some density. Yes, you know, I know the guys in Worcester Street don't want to hear about anything more than 8 units, but someone's going to tell them, look, it's environmentally friendly. It's good for your community. It puts foot traffic right in the middle of a commercial area in the center of Grafton that everybody on the CPC seems to think is important because we keep spending money there, right? So like all these things tie together. And I think that the more that people see that and understand that, the more that people see that tamping down the crazy rise in home values, it only benefits you by adding a few more units to the market. Because if you're like congratulations to me, I bought a house at 465 that Zillow's telling me is now worth 750. Yippee. That's a lot of great paper wealth, but if I choose to sell the home, I'm going to have to pay for something more expensive. All I'm doing is getting taxed on that while I'm here, right? So there are a lot of these like really complex intertwined issues that I think that people don't understand enough. And the more that we talk about these things, the more that I think reasonable minds are going to come around to the idea of, okay, simply because we're in safe harbor doesn't mean we're automatically saying no to this, you know?
Yep. Just a couple quick things on that. I think now that is the time to look at zoning since we're looking at MBTA anyways.
Yep.
Right. So that's that's another Massachusetts stick, right? To say, you're not going to get any funding, essentially we have to provide housing, workforce housing for people that need to commute. And that's just, they're forcing municipalities to do that because we have to have, it's a crisis. And so that's what happens. That's what happened with 40B. We were in a crisis where everybody was just being pushed out because of zoning. So I think that now's the time to look at that. The other thing, Ed, too, I think you're totally right. The community impact analysis from Eastlake, I thought was kind of now my gold standard. And I think it's something that we need for people to understand more deeply because, everybody always talks about economic development to try to, maintain a reasonable tax burden on residents. And having diversity in certain areas in town is another way to do that. And it's, I would argue it's more effective than bringing in small business. We don't have, just looking at the numbers, right? So for the same sort of parcel, the same land, we found that it's very difficult to bring businesses into Grafton. And You know, this
Matt.
this is another way that you know, for all the people out there that complain about their taxes, look at what these developments will do for Grafton, and this is recurring revenue. This is
Yep.
not one time. We get a ton of one-time money and permit fees and new growth from the state and all that kind of stuff, which is great. But then you get recurring revenue because the infrastructure burden from these types of developments is much less than the, you know, the tax contributions
So,
of the people living
ju-
in there. So
You're meeting
that
next
message
Tuesday,
needs to
Matt?
get out there.
You're meeting next
What's that?
Tuesday on your agenda items next Tuesday for a talk on this?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Was Peter gonna invite us to it, or is this as a talk about to have a future?
This is a discussion amongst the select board. I've basically just asked to put a discussion on there. My hope is that we can organize a workshop and invite a bunch of people in, that the Housing Trust would be invited in, obviously, as well as ZBA and other players. Or we could consider putting together a working group, which I think, because of the sort of the policy work and the zoning and all that kind of stuff, I think maybe a standing working group might make more sense
So-
than just some workshops.
Why don't I add this also to the agenda for a couple weeks, as long as we're a little bit more direct on it. We should be able to get that done as well. So let's digest what Ed and Matt were just talking about, and some of the outlets we can take it to. And I guess what we should probably do is come up with, a statement on our own behalf. This is what we think. This is how we feel we can help contribute to this discussion. And this is, as advocates for affordable housing, these are the things you're going to need. I would say that just between the two of your conversations, bringing everybody in to like a TRICOM type of thing is all well and good. But we talked a little bit before about, how many things get in the way of good forward progress, and stopping at one of those things could be one of them too.
Is that something Laura can help us frame the language on or discussion on? Because I know on some of the discussions I listened to her on, she talks about even just simple zoning changes of a 1 family to a 2 family.
Yeah. And the other thing too that we're going to be doing over the next couple months is we got to update the housing production plan.
Yeah.
So we can build on that, and take a lot of these things into consideration, and we can go to CPC and ask for some more money to go a little bit beyond the housing production plan, and hire some experts that can help.
Yeah,
Makes sense. Chris is going to start work on the master plan too, the comprehensive plan. So it'd be interesting if we could feed some information into that process.
The housing production plan should be pivotal in
Yeah.
any of those discussions.
I'm with you.
Okay, I will make sure.
Just real quick, I just I think Brittany made a really good point. Matt, definitely let the select board know that we have the MPH resources here to help us. They have a ton of expertise, so again, we don't have to start from the 0 yard line. They've already done a bunch of this work other places. If we need more money for them, we can ask for it from CPC, or we can apply for more grants. So they might have kind of like a starter pack of hey, do this, this, and this now.
I think they're free, aren't they? Their services?
Yep.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an award of a grant, so but it can encompass a lot of different things. Now they're just one office, so that
Yeah.
they might not take all that on for us. The one thing that we need to make sure of, this just kind of go back to the GSX project and our contribution to it. That needs to be the center point of our conversation, because I talk to a million people. They think it's just some 40B project that's going in. No, it's actually zoned for that. We're taking advantage of that to do more, but as I'm going through this process with them, there are glaring holes in that bylaw that we can be doing a lot more with. And we know it works because they're going out and raising, $30 million to do it. So we know it works. We know it's time to actually do this because these things are going up all over the place. And if, you don't want to send, Eastland to ZBA, sending that overlay district right down Upton Street should work fabulously in a town meeting. And then get them before a special permit process, and so they don't have to go before the ZBA. You know, take obstructions out of the way of good development. Now that we've seen some good ones, we can tailor that law and change it as, you know, and we can do that relatively quickly too. You know, they said that they were going to be in a 6-month lip process with you, and so help me if I keep hearing people talk about, you know, bike paths and, you know, hanging that on them when 80% of AMI, you know, excludes nearly everybody in the state to live in Grafton. We need to talk about 60, 40, 30% of AMI before we talk about getting some knick-knack park somewhere.
Yep.
Those are real concerns, and those are what Grafton is going to have a real significant impact on the housing crisis. Because $2,000 a month rent, 80% of that is still pricing out everybody.
Yep.
You know, that we want to see in our community. So, it's 10 o'clock. I think we should wrap it up, and I'll get as much as I can on the next agenda. I'll work with Matt and Evan if I need to, and see what we can do. All right, everybody good to go home?
Yep.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
By roll call, Dan,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Matt,
I
Brittany,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Bruce, we're out.